Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Soccer Morning on the airwaves, internet waves, iWaves. Jason Davis here with you. Fantastic Monday morning. J. Cole brings us the music today. Thank you to Jay for his contributions and his selections of very, very long songs that required a lot of work to get them ready. Thank you anyway. No, thank you very much to Jay. Big show today. 3 excellent guests lined up for you. Kyle McCarthy, in just a couple of minutes, we'll go over MLS. Hopefully we'll veer off into a little Mexican playoffs as well. Some interesting results in Mexico in the quarterfinals of the Liga MX Liguilla. Also today, Luke Moore joins us, talk a little Premier League as the season winds down. Last weekend coming up. Championship weekend is what it's called, I guess. Right? That's what NBC Sports calls it on my television. 10 networks to broadcast every single game from the Premier League on the last day of the season, which will be fun. But in the meantime, you've got Manchester City winning against Everton. Got Liverpool playing today against Palace. We know if City handles their business, then they will win the title on goal differential. Is it possible that there's a slip left? What's going to happen as the season closes out? In the Premier League, we also have Chelsea with the draw, Jose Mourinho being Jose Mourinho. It's been a fantastic season in the Premier League just from an intrigue perspective, and it's closing down. We'll talk to Luke about all of that, and then later on, Claudio Reyna, sporting director for New York City FC, will join us 11 o'clock. Go ahead and write that down because you want to listen to that. We'll talk to Claudio about the prep work going into getting New York City FC off the ground. Obviously, the decision to play at Yankee Stadium for how long? How long will they be there? How will that affect their play? How will that affect how they prepare to join MLS in 2015? How does that affect player recruitment? How does that affect what Jason Christ will do? And there's the other things that surround building that club. Where are they going to train? I think we've seen it's Manhattanville in Westchester County. What will the academy system be like for New York City FC? Lots of partnerships announced as NYCFC kind of sort of scoops up some of the youth clubs around the New York area. So that should be a good discussion with Claudio at 11 o'clock. So there you go. Kyle McCarthy, Luke Moore, Claudio Reyna. What more could you ask for on a Monday? Not sure you could ask for anything more on a Monday. But let's get into it. We've got plenty to talk about beyond those topics. There's, again, we'll get into MLS with Kyle McCarthy. We'll get into La Liga, which is tightening up. Real Madrid dropping points. Although Cristiano Ronaldo with the goal of the year so far. Anybody want to deny that that's the goal of the year? And I made a comment on Twitter that the eye-foot coordination to pull that off is absolutely insane. Maybe the best I've ever seen. Some people pointed me in the direction of one Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and yes, Zlatan has done some similarly amazing things. That was a fantastic goal by Cristiano Ronaldo. Let's not go into which one was better because let's just enjoy them. They were both amazing. You got the news that broke after the show on Friday. I don't think I discussed Gideon Zelalem on Friday. And the report by Stephen Goff of the Washington Post. Maybe I did. If my memory is going, I apologize. Certainly touch on that a little bit if you guys want to. The kid's 17 years old. His one appearance for Arsenal was as a substitute in an FA Cup game against Coventry. So let's not hold him up as a savior for the U.S. national team at any point if he chooses to play for the USA. Because again, getting your citizenship, becoming eligible, doesn't mean he's necessarily going to play. There's lots of reasons to become a citizen of the country where you spent your formative years. He's not doing this necessarily just to be eligible for the national team, although that could be the reason. We don't know. I don't know. Anybody got Gideon Zelalem's phone number? We can just send him a text right now. Send him a text like, do you like us? Are you interested? Are you coming over to the United States? And the other part of all this is if he does get that citizenship, this is outside of even U.S. national team implications. What does that mean for his work permit in England? Because I'm not positive about that. I thought that was something to do with Germany and citizenship or German passport. Does he have to turn it in if he gets U.S. citizenship and a U.S. all of that? How does that impact getting his LLM. But before we get into the Premier League and MLS and Liga MX and Claudio Reyna from NYCFC, just a couple minutes. I just want to spend a couple minutes here on the A-League Grand Final. Now, I recorded the A-League Grand Final because it was at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night, Sunday morning, however you think of that. If you're one of those people who stay up really, really late, that's Saturday night. If you're one of those people who goes to bed at 10 or 10:30 or even midnight, that's Sunday morning. So it was Saturday night, Sunday morning. I recorded it. I didn't get to watch the entire thing yesterday. I tried. Lots of things happening in my house on a Sunday. My kid wants to go outside and run around. It's very nice outside. How do I say, no, I need to sit here and watch this Australian soccer game that happened last night and not go out and fly a kite with you or run around and kick the ball with you, whatever. Can't do it. So I didn't get to watch the whole thing. I understand the Brisbane War won the title. And I want to say that was a double for them, that they won the points title as well, which I think they call the Premiership. I'm a little sketchy on my A-League details. I think that's right. Premiership and then Championship for the grand final. Anyway, it was at the Brisbane Roars Stadium, Suncorp. And the thing that struck me most, number one, it was a brilliant atmosphere. Number two, what I saw was not the greatest soccer. It was two tense teams. This is what happens in a final. I'm not judging the A-League on that one game. Seemed to be a little bit of quality there, but, two teams sort of cagey. Didn't really want to open up. So it wasn't that entertaining from what I watched. Again, I didn't watch the whole thing. I don't even know if I got to halftime. But the other thing I noticed was this was a Fox production in Australia that I recorded. I don't know what time it was, or I don't even remember what channel. Oh, it was Fox Sports 2 is where it was. I think the grand final has been on ESPN in the past, but in this case, it was on Fox Sports 2, so I had a standard definition feed because I don't have Fox Sports 2 in HD. But what I noticed is that this Fox Sports presentation, and I know the Australian Fox is different from the American Fox, etc. So I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really good. I'm sure it was maybe a little too Australian for my taste, but for that audience, I'm sure it was fantastic. I thought that was a stellar presentation of a big event. And I wonder, and I have no issues with the way MLS or the way ESPN presents MLS Cup final or anything like that. But we know, and you watch enough soccer to know, Fox does not have the greatest reputation for soccer here, whether it's European soccer or in the past, American soccer, in the future, perhaps American soccer, because the TV deal for MLS is looming. And despite the fact that NBC Sports was rumored to be back at the table, it very well could be that Fox gets MLS back. And they are going to get criticized unless they put on a top-notch presentation. So all I'm saying is, how is it that the A-League in Australia gets Fox doing top-notch presentation for their biggest game of the year, and we can't seem to get Fox to kick into high gear here? I don't know. What's the disconnect? Maybe we just port over everything that the Australian League does, everything that Fox does for the Australian League, and bring it to the United States. Maybe we can do that. Because I'd be fine with that. If you didn't see any, it's the only A-League I watched this year, by the way. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will grab Kyle McCarthy. And he will talk to us about MLS and Liga MX, and it'll be a good time. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
I got Soccer Morning, joined now on the telephone by Kyle McCarthy from Fox Sports, among other places. Kyle J. McCarthy on Twitter. Kyle, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well this morning. How are you?
I'm good. It's one of those days. It's the European leagues are closing down, but we have plenty of North American soccer happening, and there's never a dull moment. Got plenty to talk about in MLS, and we might actually talk a little Mexican soccer as well. But I'm going to start with the American and Canadian League because there are, I don't know, surprising results is an odd thing to say in this league, but you have some score lines, especially the way some of these games went, that do surprise you a little bit. And I'm going to start with the team you've covered for a very long time, the New England Revolution, beating TFC in Toronto 2-0, and give me an idea of whether or not it was as fortunate a win as it seemed to me via highlights, because I didn't get to watch the whole thing, Kyle.
It was and it wasn't. I think Toronto FC looked good in the early stages. Jackson scored to sort of consolidate.
2-1, right?
But they never really built on it.
Yeah.
You know, they never quite found a way to get that second goal and really grasp the game with both hands. And New England has done a good job over the past couple of weeks of hanging in and then finding a way to bring up the results out of the game at the end. And they did that last week in the 2-0 victory against Sporting City, and they did it at Toronto for their first ever win at BMO Field.
Yeah, Jackson with the goal. I apologize. 2-1 was the final score. Patrick Mullins with his first career goal, and it was a fantastic goal, but it was off of a really bad turnover by Daniil Henry. From your perspective, Daniil Henry, I guess you have to take the good with the bad. Is there enough good to kind of overlook, maybe not these moments because you lost the game because of it, but certainly over the course of a full year to overlook some of these mistakes?
I think that's the idea. For me, if Toronto FC wants to be a serious MLS Cup contender, they're going to probably need an upgrade at that spot. I know that there was a bit of clamor to have Bradley Orr start there, even though he's a natural fullback. It's just a matter of this sort of risk that TFC is willing to tolerate as it moves forward, because Henry is not really a reliable figure as of yet. There are a lot of good pieces. There are a lot of things that he does well, but he's not a consistent player yet.
Also around the league, Portland gets their first win of the year against DC United. It took an added time goal from Max Cerruti to do it. Did you see enough positives there? And I think Portland has sort of started to play well despite the results not going their way. Did you see enough positives there to make you think that Portland can put together some results, climb back into the Western Conference playoff picture at the very least, and perhaps challenge again for one of the top spots?
I think the result is the most positive thing for the Timbers right now. They've put together some decent performances earlier in the year and not found a way to get the points. I don't know if 3-2 at home against DC United is exactly what Caleb Porter had in mind, but they got the early goal through Gaston Fernandez after 34 seconds, and they get the very late goal from Max Cerruti to win the game. So the question for the Timbers right now, is that one victory enough to slide them back on track? We'll have to wait and see.
The idea seems to be at this point, based on the caliber of player they have in their defensive areas, that they may have to go out and outscore teams rather than maybe lock it down towards the end. You give up 2 to DC United at home, and DC United's played very well recently, or at least gotten some good results. It doesn't fill you with a ton of confidence moving forward. And Pa Mudaka and Footy Danso aren't really instilling a lot of confidence.
And it's the same stuff over and over again. There are still the questions at right back, though Jack Dewsbury was very good on Saturday. They have some concentration issues, those lapses that tend to plague their work in the defensive third. And then the set piece concerns are always there. They gave up another one on Saturday, a Footy Danso heading into his own net. So it's not a structural issue in Portland. They're set up pretty well. It's just a matter of executing to a high level on a regular basis. They need to get there because they're not going to be able to win every game 3-2 this year.
Bouncing around a little bit, RSL comes back to beat Chicago 3-2. Joao Plata is the star of the day. That game, I don't know what kind of how we add context to a game in which RSL really wasn't themselves, at least in the score line for most of it, and then put together a decent run. I suppose that what that indicates is RSL's never out of anything, but do they have the consistency to be among the league's best at the end of the season?
Yes, they do, and I think Saturday's win at Chicago shows how RSL presents the sort of threat that they do. I mean, they're undefeated through 9 games because sometimes they find a way to win or draw when they're not quite at their best. And Chicago was the better side in the first half of that game, but they left the door open. They didn't find a way to seal the points, and RSL clawed its way back in and found a method to exploit the fire and make them a little bit shaky. So for RSL, it's about churning out results, and again, I think that was a good way for them to complete their trip to Chicago. But really, the question's with the Fire right now, because the way in which they conceded those 2 goals will have left Frank Yallop furious. His post-game comments were quite interesting, in fact.
Okay, well, I haven't seen those. I'll have to go back and look at them. And you actually bring up something that I don't know if it's too. I don't know if it fits the MLS narrative, because this has never been a league where coaches are on the hot seat enough through a quarter or a half or even 3/4 of a season to have their jobs on the line usually. But are we seeing a shift in thinking a little bit? I'm not saying Frank Yallop's on the hot seat necessarily, but obviously you've got Klopas up in Montreal, and there might be a couple of other guys who you could argue should be under pressure for their jobs. Is that the case anywhere? Is Yallop potentially one of those guys if things don't turn around for Chicago?
It really depends on the investor operator, because if you're talking about firing an MLS coach, you're also talking about picking up his salary. And there aren't a ton of investor operators who will dip in their pocket to pay off multiple years. So you have to look at the length of the contract and the stomach of the investor operator to really dip into the pocket there. At this point, I don't really see anybody in peril at the moment. I mean, Frank Klopas would be the natural one, but that's because Montreal makes changes seemingly every day. Yeah. So John Hackworth would probably be on the list at this point. The Union are 1, 4, and 5. And Ryan Nelson is always on the list because Toronto FC needs a playoff berth. But in terms of imminent danger, I think it's something where you kind of just have to wait and see, because it's still early days yet.
Okay. A guy who's certainly not on the hot seat and probably will never be as long as he wants to be there, Bruce Arena. The LA Galaxy go to Colorado and put up a stinker, for lack of a better way of saying it. They couldn't score a goal. Colorado gets a win. I suppose you could argue they deserve it, but is the pressure of the goal record getting to Landon Donovan? What's going on with the Galaxy right now?
Landon Donovan needs a goal. And it's not any more complicated than that at this stage. He had a wonderful chance to score in the second half. First time after that, he usually just tucks away without a second thought, and he sliced it wide. I mean, he hit it well enough, but he didn't put it on frame, and that's not like Landon Donovan. So for me, I think Landon just needs that one game where he gets 1, gets 2, and then finally puts himself back on track. And as the Galaxy goes, so goes Landon Donovan. I think the Galaxy will be fine, but they want to work through this.
Well, he doesn't have much time left, assuming he's on the 30-man roster that Jurgen Klinsmann's going to call into his camp, and I would be shocked if he's not. So he's got limited time to make it happen before the World Cup comes around, and then when he comes back, who knows what the feeling will be around the Galaxy.
That's true. The question for Landon, is he going to be on the 23-man roster? Because you've seen enough cracks in his form. Right. You've seen enough indifference from Jurgen Klinsmann to wonder, is he going to be one of those guys who's surprisingly left off? Personally, I don't think so, but that's the sort of question that you start to hear more and more as this season progresses.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned you mentioned John Hackworth potentially being under pressure. We don't necessarily think so, perhaps because of the way the Union have played the money game over the past couple of years. They're not one of those teams that probably doesn't want to have to pay him and pay somebody else. but they're not playing well. They've dropped off dramatically after starting the season relatively well against teams we thought were going to be better than they were at that point. They lose to Seattle 2-1. I suppose that's the losing on the road to Seattle is not really one of those things that throws you into panic. But based on the previous couple of results, what's the issue?
They need to find a way to get a result without conceding at the inopportune time. And that's really what it comes down to. The base of that team right now is not as firm as John Hackworth would like. And that's down to him at this point. He just made the decision to go to Aaron Wheeler at center back and leave Austin Berry out in the cold. And they've conceded 13 times this year. That's a lot. So they're gonna have to find a way to make sure that they play from minute 1 to minute 90 and really cobble together the sort of display that answers a few of those questions, because there's some talent there. It's just a matter of handling everything together at the same time. Meanwhile,
Seattle, where you would have expected them to be based on the talent and the money that they spent, they are among the best teams in the league, and we'll get to Sporting in just a second here. But are they meeting your expectations? This is a team that can go and win MLS Cup, perhaps good enough for the double if they can navigate the time frame that they'll have without a couple of their players.
It's about consistency for Seattle, and they've started to show that. They've been very good over the past few weeks, and they were able to get 3 points against Philadelphia. It was a good showcase for Chad Marshall, I thought, on Saturday. He was very effective in his own box, had 6 blocks, and really submitted the sort of defensive display that makes you stand up and say, oh, wait, yeah, that's Chad Marshall. He's that consistent guy who's always there and who's always doing stuff for you. And then he pops with the winner at the other end. So I think Seattle's in a good spot right now, but Clint Dempsey getting ready to go to the World Cup will obviously make a difference for him.
Quick thing about Marshall. Is he better now than he was in Columbus, or is it because he's playing for a more high-profile team that he's getting more attention?
It's the latter, mostly. Marshall has been very good for a long time. It's just a matter of whether he has been able to receive the attention for it. And when you play in Seattle, you have a little bit more scrutiny placed upon you, and he's done a good job so far. He hasn't been perfect, but he's been his usually steady self, and Seattle really needed that in the middle of the back four.
Top of the East matched up between Sporting Kansas City and Columbus. Columbus going to Sporting Park, not an easy place to play, although over the last couple of years, Sporting hasn't really used that home field advantage to its full extent. They do here. They win 2-0. Clearly the best team in the East right now.
New York would probably have some questions about that, even though the Red Bulls weren't particularly good against FC Dallas yesterday. But the reason why Sporting is probably the best team in the Eastern Conference is because Sporting understands how it wants to play and operates within a set system. That's a team that knows exactly what it wants to do when it steps on the field. And you can't put a price on that when you go into the middle of the season and you're trying to churn out results. That's the sort of setup that helps you accomplish those goals.
Also, Vancouver beating San Jose 3-2 there at BC Place. This is Pedro Morales, and Vancouver obviously has plenty of attacking talent. It's always been a question of whether or not they can use it to its full extent. Kenny Miller is gone, but even that doesn't necessarily put a dent in what Vancouver can do scoring-wise.
Yeah, they were good against San Jose on Saturday, and most importantly, they were fast. Vancouver, to me, seems like the sort of team that plays better when they push the tempo, and they just ramped up the cadence of their game to a point that San Jose simply couldn't cope with them in that early opening period of that match. So there will be probably another attacking player added at some point. They really need a reliable finisher, a guy who they know can provide a different element, a target sort of operator. But there's some talent there, and I think Carl Robinson's done a nice job to get this team humming and get them into a position where they're inside the playoff line at this point, 9 games into the season.
Yeah, you mentioned New York going to Dallas. I'm not sure there's a whole lot to say about that game. New York had a man advantage for most of it. Didn't seem to really take advantage of that until the goal from Bradley Wright Phillips off the nice feed from Thierry Henry. You just need that one little moment, I suppose, in the heat in Texas. And then Houston beating Chivas 4-1. Not sure there's a lot to say about that game, except Chivas is reverting to their previous selves, as I suppose we thought they might. And Wilmer Cabrera's got his work cut out for him. But I also want to touch, before I got to let you go, Kyle, I want to touch on the Mexican playoffs. We talked a little bit about the first legs last week with Eric Gomez. Second legs this weekend. There were some surprises.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird weekend because you have the teams that you expect to go through, your Cruz Azuls and your Club Americas, and they came up short. And that's difficult for Mexican soccer because you're looking at a setup where you're going into the semifinals. There are no Mexico City sides. There are no Big Four sides in the last four. So it's interesting how everything worked out, and it's the sort of thing where there's always intrigue involved, and this time it's a little bit different.
Well, who's your favorite at this point?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think Toluca is probably the favorite at this stage. I know that won't make anybody in San Jose very happy, but they're the most complete team left. They're very good defensively, very solid. They keep the ball fairly well, and they present a threat up front with Pablo Velasquez and Edgar Benitez, and Senia's back now as well. So they've got a difficult test against Club Leon, and Leon will certainly press the initiative against them in the semifinals. But I think if I had to pick one now, Toluca is probably the best bet.
All right. Well, you mentioned Leon. They squeak in. Last seed, 8th seed. If this situation is, if a team in Mexico from the bottom playoff spot goes and wins the whole thing, we get the same hand wringing that we get in the United States if an 8 or a 9 or whatever wins MLS Cup. No,
there really isn't, and this is Club Leon's place in the Liguilla is all due to the largesse of others. They won on the final weekend at Club America and then watched everybody around them fail on Saturday and Sunday. Chivas had a chance to get into the playoffs and then stumbled at home to Monterrey. And at the time, it looked pretty perilous for Cruz Azul to see the defending champions pop up as the 8th seed, and it proved to be for La Maquina. Leon's a good side. There are substantive defensive questions for them, but they attack in numbers, and they have the ability to tear teams apart. So it would be an interesting contrast in styles with Toluca, two teams that really want the ball.
Just a thought here for Tijuana, which is a club that a lot of Americans pay attention to because they have a lot of Americans. They go out to Toluca. I'm assuming that there's not a lot of surprise there, but what is the situation at Tijuana as it is right now? I guess with the Apertura, the Clausura, it's kind of you should take a bigger picture look at the club and its current state. But are they in a position to challenge when we begin the next season? Where do they sit?
They're not there yet. They're in a little bit of a retooling process under Cesar Farias. They did fairly well, I thought, during the Clausura to get into the Liguilla, get into the last four, the CONCACAF Champions League. And they could have tipped over Toluca with a little bit more sharpness in the final third. Dario Benedetto was fairly wasteful over the two legs. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be a matter of the investment that they're willing to put into the squad. Tijuana is not one of the more lavish sides in Liga MX. They've got a decent base. It's just a matter of whether they want to spend the money to apply a little gloss to it.
While I have you here, something that Eric Gomez mentioned to us last week is the potential for Omar Gonzalez to move to Mexico. Now, those rumors aren't necessarily new, but he says there's something legitimate happening there. And rather than ask for where you think he should end up, Omar Gonzalez playing in Mexico, whether it's for Club America or somebody else, is that a good fit for him? Is that something he should consider at this point post-World Cup? And would the LA Galaxy even think about selling him?
I don't know if LA Galaxy would think about selling him. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, considering how that team plays without him in the middle of its back four. But Gonzalez could certainly play there. He's physical enough for that league. It would also test him in different ways. It would stress his distribution, which hadn't been a strong part in his game. And it would place him up against quick and clever forwards on a regular basis, which is another thing that he has struggled with from time to time. So it's not the worst of fits, but there's a very limited group of clubs that would be willing to spend the sort of money to bring Gonzalez into the fold. And I don't know if it's a realistic thing yet, but you never really know until it happens, I guess.
Kyle J. McCarthy on Twitter. Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer and other outlets joining us to talk MLS and League MX. Appreciate your time as always, Kyle. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Jason. Have a good one.
You too. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will grab Luke Moore from the Football Ramble and move our attention over to England to talk about the close of the Premier League season. 1 weekend left. Manchester City in line for a title. It's going to happen. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
I'm just going to close the window.
You're fine.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Second Soccer Morning. Joined now by Luke Moore. He's getting up, closing the window when we come back on the air. Hi, Luke.
How you doing? All right.
I'm good. Let's.
Sorry, I thought I had a bit more time.
No, I should have warned you. I should have given you 10 seconds or something. I'm not good with my cues. That's on me. But we have you.
Viewers are happy. That's fine.
You know what? All I care about is the connection is stable. It doesn't matter if you want to get up and move around. As long as we can hear you and the connection stays good. Those transatlantic cables work out. We'll be fine. Or satellite. Cool. I don't know. How does this work? Satellite? No. We're here. We've got Luke to talk about the Premier League. It's been one of the more fascinating seasons in recent memory. We right now have a tie at the top of the table, Manchester City and Liverpool. With Liverpool playing today at Selhurst Park against Crystal Palace. But we know that if Manchester City does what they're supposed to do, this is their title to win, Luke. Based on what you saw, they beat Everton. There's really no reason to doubt them at the moment, is there?
No, I wouldn't say so. It was a bit of a strange game at Goodison Park on Saturday tea time. Seemed a strange one from where I was sitting anyway. But they got the job done. It was the hardest game they had left on paper. They got two pretty winnable games left at home to Aston Villa on Wednesday, and then they're at home to West Ham on Sunday. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to fancy them now. I think it's going to take a huge goal swing from Liverpool, which, I think it's probably not quite beyond the realms of possibility. If you take basically that everything that's within the sort of known laws of physics is technically possible, it could happen. Yeah. But I don't think many Liverpool fans, or if they're really honest with themselves, Liverpool players would think they could overhaul this now, because I can't see Man City not winning their last 2 games, to put it bluntly.
No, absolutely not. I'm trying to conceive of a situation. Liverpool beats Crystal Palace by 5. They beat Newcastle by 5, and then Manchester City. That's not even possible. They would still win on points, and it can't even work out. It can't work out. I mean, I would love for it to, because it would be an amazing end to this. If in fact, I suppose it can't be anticlimactic, because Manchester City still has to win their 2 games left. But in the end, if it comes down to this, and we don't have teams on points close enough and goal differential close enough to give us that last day drama, is that a disappointment, or has it been enough so far?
It's just the way it goes, isn't it? I mean, I think, look, if Liverpool win tonight against Palace, which I think they will, and then Manchester City win on Wednesday, there will be points. There will be points on the final day where there may be, I don't know, Liverpool may score early, Man City may be drawing. That it could happen. I mean, there will be a little bit of drama here or there. The top 4 is decided now, obviously. I would say that relegation is pretty much decided, but that's the way it goes sometimes. We've had a great season. It's been really dramatic. It's been a lot of things going on. I think we can't really complain. It's always nice to have a bit of sort of last day drama that we had. We had a lot of drama on the last day of the Championship at the weekend, which was good. But overall, it's been a good season, I think.
Yeah, look, I mean, to not have the champion crowned in April is probably a good thing anytime unless you're a fan of that particular team. In this case, it's a season that coming.
But even
down.
then, it's still a bit boring.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're coming down to the last weekend with the possibility of something to play for at the very, very top, that's a bonus, considering there have been years when April has crowned a champion. You mentioned the top 4 being solidified now. Obviously, Chelsea comes up a bit short, and we've talked about how Jose Mourinho has alternately talked about being not a challenger for the title, and then being upset when things don't go his way, or a referee makes a decision he doesn't like, or a team plays a style he doesn't like, which is with Luke Moore. I apologize for the momentary interruption. I jinxed it by talking about the connection. That's my fault. That's right. I was talking about Chelsea a little bit, Luke, and whether or not this is a disappointment to have sort of played themselves out of a title chance, considering that Mourinho has been talking about them not being contenders, but also throwing fits whenever things don't go his way.
Yeah, I think people naturally assumed it was a bit of kidology from Mourinho, so they couldn't win it and all this other stuff, and really what's cost them the title has been some pretty poor results. One to Aston Villa, one to Crystal Palace, and one to Sunderland. And again, yesterday a point against Norwich wasn't great either. They can still technically win the title this season, but they won't. And it comes down to what you think Mourinho's sort of tactics were, both on and off the pitch. I mean, off the pitch, he's been pretty vocal about how he doesn't think his team have got a chance. A lot of people think that he would prefer to win it next season when he can get a striker in and he can use this season's, in quotes, failure to get himself a new frontline striker. They've also got to work out what they're going to do with Terry, Lampard and Cole, all of whom are out of contract, I think, this summer. They've got to put that to bed as well, because that's a good amount of experience. And John Terry's been one of the standout defenders in the Premier League this season, so they've got to sort that out. I think they've done okay. They've not really set the world on fire. They've not scored enough goals. They've been a bit boring. but sort of what you expect from a Mourinho side more often than not. He tends to provide the drama himself off the pitch and bores the pants off everyone else on it. So we'll see what happens next year. There'll be contenders next year for sure. Mm-hmm. It'll be hard. I think Man City will go on and win the title this season now, and it'll be hard for them to defend it. It always is harder. So by that definition alone, Chelsea are going to have a big chance next year.
Lampard, Terry, and Cole. How many of those guys do you think can still get the job done at the level required next season? When is it time to say goodbye? I'm not suggesting that they do. Clearly, icons, all of them, especially Terry and Lampard at the club. But at some point, you do have to kind of say, okay, look, even if you are good enough occasionally or 3/4 of the season, we need to move on to start the new era.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's difficult to do wholesale changes at once, isn't it? I mean, we've seen clubs this season struggle to bring rafts of new players in and get them to gel together. Obviously, ideally, it'll be a gradual process. I don't really see Terry or Lampard leaving the club. Imagine Terry will take up a coaching role or a sort of ambassador's role or something like that. But really, I think it's too early to be talking about Terry leaving anyway as a player, because I think he's been really good this season and he will continue to be good next season. With the way Mourinho plays, they don't play with that massive high line, do they? So it's not difficult for John Terry to be a bit slow and still perform, which is what he's done this season. He'll stick around for sure. I imagine Lampard will get an extension. He's not been playing as much as he has in years gone by, but that's understandable. And he's still got a lot to offer. I think he's a good player. Whether he can be persuaded to just sit a lot deeper and sort of try and conduct things from there, we'll see. Mourinho doesn't seem to fancy Ashley Cole as much these days. But when he has come back in over these last few games, he's performed well and he's still got a lot to offer. So it's not unfeasible that they could all feature next season. But I know that Mourinho will want to bring in a top-line striker. He seems to have this funny problem with Eden Hazard at the moment. He seems to be the new Juan Mata for some reason. But Hazard's really been their best creative attacking player. I don't really understand the sort of motivation behind that. But we'll see what happens next year. But I think they'll be contenders. I think as I just said to you, Man City will find it hard to defend the title. They'll probably win. And Liverpool, we don't know whether this has been a bit of a fluky run that they've been on, and whether they can sort of continue that form next season remains to be seen. So I think, by definition, Chelsea will be a feature next season.
Liverpool's issue will be the goal load that Suarez and Sturridge carried this season, whether or not that can continue next year. At Chelsea with Mourinho, and then let me keep it in London. We'll kind of bounce around the top four. Arsenal finished fourth. I suppose that's a success considering how dicey things got the last month and a half, a little bit more than that. But they are still not reaching the levels that they expect. We're not going to talk about whether or not Wenger should leave or be pushed out, but they do need to do something. What is it that they can do?
Well, they're only 4 points off the top. I mean, they can't win it, but I mean, it's not. We're not talking like a huge overhaul here. I mean, you look at Liverpool last season and what they've turned it around to this season. I mean, the points deficit was massive, and they've improved greatly. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for that. Chiefly that they haven't had European football, of course. But Arsenal aren't a million miles away from doing something. It just seems to be a problem of mentality. If you put it another way, actually, if Aaron Ramsey stayed fit the whole season, would they have been worth an extra 4, 5, 6 points? Probably. So they're not far away. They're not far away given the massive amount of investment that Man City and Chelsea have had. And Liverpool have shown that you can compete and not spend extraordinary amounts of money. Of course, Liverpool have spent some money, but not at the level of City or Chelsea, so it can be done. I don't think they'll be too disheartened.
Okay.
So another year of Champions League football for them. They would definitely be favourites to lift the FA Cup, which is a decent trophy to win. It's been okay for them. I suppose I'm not an Arsenal fan, but if I were, I'd probably be disappointed with the month that you just referenced, where they had it all to play for and it was all there for them, and they sort of come up a bit short mentally more than anything else. But I don't know. Sometimes Arsene Wenger cuts a quite a jaded figure, in my view. I don't know whether the players are in the image of him and whether he's got that fight still. I mean, we'll wait and see. But, I mean, he's due to sign a new contract, I think, so we'll see how that pans out.
They've got a big influx of cash, and things are changing a little bit at Arsenal. It's interesting to see. You mentioned Aaron Ramsey and the injury. You either need to have some really effective depth, someone to step in for Aaron Ramsey when he goes down, or you have to hope that everybody stays healthy for the season. And there are teams that are better at doing that. If you spend £300 million the way Manchester City did, maybe you can navigate some injuries. It didn't happen at Arsenal. And let me bring back something I spaced on here. Let me bring it back to Eden Hazard at Chelsea and the tiff he's having with Mourinho. I know Hazard gets dropped, or at least it seems he gets dropped following the comments he made about the style that Chelsea is playing. That seems like a very petty way for Mourinho to handle it. And you mentioned it. He's the new Juan Mata. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Does that indicate anything particular to you about Mourinho and his current ability to navigate some of the problems he has? Or is it just, men fighting? Because that's what it is.
I just think he likes to stake a claim. I just think that Mourinho likes to show players that he's the boss and that it's his club. And I think that comes from initially when he first started out as a coach and he wasn't really a player of any repute. So it was important for him to be the ultimate dominant alpha male in the group. Showed that he wouldn't take any stick and that he wouldn't take any back talk and all this other stuff and really sort of stamp his authority down. Now, of course, over the years, it's become easier for him because he's won things. And when you win things, players are obviously much more likely to buy into what you're trying to do. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes at Chelsea, at least I don't. Hazard seems to have come out and made these comments. We don't know what he said behind closed doors, but Mourinho's made it pretty clear that he's the boss and what he says goes. And I'll tell you, Alex Ferguson made a great career out of doing that sort of thing. Yeah. He made the odd mistake in terms of judgment of players, but as soon as a player undermined him or was detrimental to the good of the group, he was out, and Ferguson didn't tend to lose any sleep over it. All I would say is Mourinho's got to be careful because they look a little bit bereft of creativity without Hazard. And it'll be difficult for them because they set up in such a way that they need a slice of brilliance and a slice of creativity sometimes. And Hazard looks like the most likely player to deliver it. I mean, he's got 16 goals this season. He's probably been their best player. And so Mourinho has got to be careful. But, look at Mourinho's CV. He's won an awful lot. It's not for me to say. I'm sure he knows what he's doing, and I'm sure there's a reason behind it.
Let's go down to the bottom and talk about the relegation fight. You mentioned that you think it's probably done. Obviously, Fulham and Cardiff are down. Specifically, those two teams. I mentioned it to you last week because I think we saw this coming with Fulham, that this 13-year run in the Premier League is fairly astonishing when you consider the resources available to a club like Fulham. But I imagine that the fans are looking for someone to blame right now. Obviously, they've had turnover at the managerial position. They have a new-ish owner. I suppose it's at his feet. Is it because Mohamed Al Fayed would spend and keep this team up? And yeah, they had a couple of close calls, but Xhaka did not necessarily meet that same standard.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though because Fulham have spent money. I mean, they spent a lot of money bringing Metroglou to the club, who's not really featured.
Hasn't done anything because he's been hurt. Yeah,
that was a gamble that hasn't paid off clearly. They're gonna, I mean, if you have that sort of amount of uncertainty around the club and you don't think you've got the right man, and then you replace him and you still don't think you've got the right man, you've got to look at yourself and your recruiting technique. I mean, if you hire someone and in 2 years' time they're not the right person for the job anymore, well, then fine. But it's probably their fault. But if you hire someone and then 2 months down the line they're not the right person for the job, it's probably your fault for hiring them.
Right.
And the problem started, in my opinion, with Martin Jol, who was far too casual, who kept coming out, despite them being on this awful run, he kept coming out and saying, there are much worse teams than us in the division, we'll be fine, all this other stuff. And it really just escalated from there. And they've not been able to put any sort of run of results together where they can hold themselves out of trouble. And most notably, if we're going to go very recently, the last 3 games they've not won. They should have beaten Hull at home. They were 2-0 up, about 15 minutes to go. If they win that game, they've got 2 extra points, of course. They're level on points with Norwich. And would they have got something at Stoke? Possibly. Probably not, actually, but possibly. And then what you've also got to throw into the mix is this just resurgent run that Sunderland have been on, where they haven't lost in 4. They've won their last 3 games on the spin. They've picked up points where you wouldn't expect them to, and that's put pay to Fulham as well. But at the end of the day, conceding 83 goals is just nowhere near good enough. It's miles more than even the second worst defence in the league. They've conceded loads more than even Cardiff, and so really the writing was on the wall. No one's lost more games than them. No one's conceded more goals. It's just not been good enough.
They went to Hull and lost 6-0. That's stunning to me that Fulham could. I mean, not that they lost at Hull, considering the quality of their squad, but to lose 6-0. Anyway, we're talking about Fulham and them going down. Would you tip them to come right back up? You think they could be that kind of club, or are we facing potentially Fulham spending a couple of years in the Championship trying to figure things out?
Well, it's difficult to say because at this stage it's a really tough thing to be able to judge, because you need to look at the summer and what happens. Now, do they keep the manager? How many of the players do they keep hold of? How many of the players are motivated? They've got to slash the wage bill, even though they'll get parachute payments. They've still got to slash the wage bill, so some of those players will go. Their best player probably recently has been Lewis Holtby. He'll go back to Spurs, to his parent club. I'll just be guessing at this stage if I was to answer that. It's not easy. Championship's a very difficult league. You play a lot more games. It seems to be one of those divisions where anyone can beat anyone. There's a lot of midweek games away from home. Mm-hmm. It's not easy at all. So it would be a difficult job for them, and they'd have to work out whether Felix Magath is the man to do it and whether he wants to do it. He certainly seems like he wants to do it. He seems like a guy who's up for a challenge. So he could stick around. I think it's the first time he's been relegated as a manager, so it'll be interesting to see how he recovers from that. But at this stage, it's very difficult to say. It's a big job.
Sunderland's surprising run and the points that they've taken off of teams they weren't supposed to take points off of, to me, it sort of indicates that the rest of their season was a massive failure. Because if they have the ability to play that way against these teams in a portion of the season, yes, everybody's tired and injuries are a factor here, but to be able to do what they've done, kind of flips it around and makes them look worse in my mind. They'll probably avoid relegation. I suppose that's the biggest thing. But is there anything to that? And how much do you lay it, obviously, to Canio's feet and then Poyet's feet?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them a few times this season, and occasionally they look really good. I thought they were really good in the first half of the League Cup final against City. They played well, and they've got it in them to play well. And and as I've said to you on this show before, they've always been the team who showed something here and there. And they may occasionally lose games, and it's very rare they've been completely disappointing the whole game. There obviously have been a few examples of that, but they've always shown something. And if you look at the teams around them, you may not be able to say that about those other teams. Sunderland need to basically get a point from being at home to West Brom, I think, on Wednesday, and then they're at home to Swansea, I believe. They get a point out of those two because of the goal difference. They're safe, so they're going to stay up. Poyet needs to rebuild this summer, and they really need to sort of kick on. But I suppose you're down there because you deserve to be down there. At this stage of the season, you can't really make any argument either way. I mean, the points acquired are what they are. We're not talking about the first couple of months of the season where you have a tough start to the season or you had been a bit unlucky here or there. They've played 36, 37 games now, these teams, and they're where they deserve to be. And for Sunderland to leave it so late and leave it to a situation where they need to pick up points against really difficult teams, fine, that's what they did. It's not advisable, is it? No one expected them to get these points that they got at this stage of the season, but they did it, and there was more than one way to skin a cat, and they're going to be a Premier League team next season, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, look, I think, if I remember correctly, their fixture list to start the season was incredibly difficult, so they obviously got off to a bad start. That impacted everything. Connor Wickham comes back and is scoring goals. I'm not sure anybody saw that coming either, Luke. The other team that's going down is Cardiff, and more interesting to me. And I know there's the Vincent Tan situation and changing the colors and everything that's going wrong at Cardiff from an ownership perspective. But the turnover at manager is interesting to me because I root for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to become a good manager, and I wonder how this is going to affect him moving on.
Yeah, you have to wonder why he took the job. I mean, clearly he was linked with some jobs before that. I think he was linked with the Aston Villa job and linked with a few bits and pieces here and there. He'd done a good job back in Norway at Mulder. Seemed to be an up-and-coming young coach. I thought at the time this was the wrong job for him because of the ownership situation. The guy's obviously not the easiest owner to work for. He had a difficult squad of players with him. It was all over the place, really. He brought some players along with him who haven't really performed. It was such a tough job for him. Now he's going to be in the Championship. Presumably, Vincent Tan's going to stick with him. I mean, Tan seems to quite like Solskjaer and rate him. But I just think sometimes you need a real hard-nosed sort of warhorse of a manager when you're down there. And Solskjaer was just a bit too green, a bit too naive with his tactical selection and stuff. And the only decent result they've had recently I can remember is that win against Southampton. I mean, that was never going to be enough, really. I mean, they're 5 points adrift even now. Only won 7 games this season. So yeah, I mean the writing was on the wall for them really. I don't know if it would. It's funny because the Malky Mackay thing and the Vincent Town thing. I don't know whether Malky Mackay's reputation has been improved in absentia, if you know what I mean. I think obviously he earned the right to manage Cardiff in the Premier League because he got them promoted.
Right.
But then you look at some of the players that he signed. I mean, he signed Cornelius for such a big amount of money. And I know he had a director of football there as well, and he didn't really work out. Not really sure Gary Medell's been the player they wanted him to be. Started off okay, but he's been pretty anonymous. I mean, last 2 or 3 games they've just been so bad. I mean, that game against Sunderland was just, it's just inexcusable, really. They were fighting for their lives against a fellow relegation candidate. They just didn't get near Sunderland's players, didn't do anything approaching, showing they were going to get anything out of the game. And that's what it comes down to. Those sort of results, you can't really get away with it. And they've also not scored enough goals. They're the second lowest or third lowest scorer in the Premier League, and that's always a recipe for disaster.
Luke Moore from the world famous Football Ramble. Luke Aaron Moore. What's the handle on Twitter? I should have written it down. I always forget.
It's just at Lukey Moore.
Lukey Moore. There you go. I knew that. I appreciate that, Trevor, tipping it. Luke Moore joining us, talk a little Premier League last couple weeks of the season. Thank you for your time as always, sir. Got to move on. Claudio Reyna is going to join us. Thanks a lot, Luke. Claudio Reyna will join us in just a couple minutes. Sporting director at New York City FC. We'll talk to him about the preparations to get that team off the ground in 2015. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning. Claudio Reyna, a very busy man. Hope to grab him shortly. Do not yet have Mr. Reyna from New York City FC, sporting director over there. Obviously, American international, captain of the U.S. national team. Great player in his day. Hope to have a chat with Claudio here shortly. We will, in the meantime, talk about a little bit of news out of the Premier League, because this is the way of the world now. If you are relegated, it's not your fault. You probably should be still in the Premier League because somebody else did something they weren't supposed to. In this case, and this is news that I find fascinating, and we'll see how far this goes. Norwich, Fulham, and Cardiff City have joined forces to present a legal challenge to their relegation because Sunderland fielded an ineligible player for 4 games this season. Now, they lost 3 of those games. I suppose the results don't actually matter. To be honest with you, I may have recalled that this happened because Sunderland got off with a fine instead of docked points. I may have recalled that this happened, but I sort of spaced on it. I'm trying to go back and remember what exactly was going on here. Was it a big deal when Sunderland was given a fine instead of being docked points? Because clearly, if Sunderland's docked points, that affects the relegation race. It's the player in question, Ji Dong-won. Don't remember why he was ineligible. Somebody fill me in here. Trying to keep track of this. On loan from Augsburg. But I'm not sure why he was ineligible. But apparently he played in 4 games over a 7-week span. That did not have clearance, was not on the list, was not eligible to play for Sunderland in Premier League matches. And now we get to have the fun of a legal fight to see who is relegated at the end of the season. This is one of those things where you want to see it. You want to see it determined on the field. Who goes down in the end? You want, and we obviously, you recall the Carlos Tevez situation, West Ham, and their third-party ownership, and what's he eligible, all of those things. That was a debacle. Nobody enjoyed that period. In fact, I don't even know. Are they still going through the legal fight? Was it Sheffield United? We still, look, all I'm saying is I'm not saying that Fulham and Cardiff and Norwich shouldn't be trying to keep themselves in the Premier League by any means necessary, especially if someone broke the rules. But it's just sad. It's just sad when this stuff happens. And I know that the drop from the Premier League to the Championship is such a big deal, so debilitating, even with the parachute payment, that it behooves these teams to do anything possible to stay up. Anything. If I have to take you to court, I'm going to take you to court. You fielded an eligible player for 4 games. Yes, you lost 3 of those games, but that doesn't matter. You should have been given a stiffer penalty because in the past, teams who have fielded ineligible players have been given stiffer penalties, like points being docked. And yeah, they did win 1 game in which he played. And I don't have the details of which game that was and what role he played in the victory for Sunderland. Or maybe as a draw. I'm not even sure it was a win. It could have been a draw. Somebody has some recollection here. I'm pulling all of this from The Guardian, trying to catch up here. Premier League is facing a possibility of a legal battle after it emerged that Cardiff, Norwich, and Fulham have joined forces and instructed lawyers to fight the controversial decision not to dock Sunderland points for fielding an ineligible player. The Observer can reveal that the first steps have been taken by a self-appointed gang of 3 to initiate proceedings about the way Sunderland were let off with a 6-figure fine despite fielding Ji Dong-won in 4 league games spread over 7 weeks earlier this season. Oh, they did? Okay, so they beat... I'm sorry. Again, sort of skimming here. Sunderland's 1-0 win at Manchester United on Saturday helped to relegate Fulham and Cardiff and leaves the Northeast club on a brilliant run of form, 3 points above the drop. However, now there is a distinct threat of legal action continuing into the summer if they stay up. 3 clubs taking on the league are demanding a review of the case. If the request is turned down, there's a strong chance that whichever club finishes 18th will sue. That's what you want. That's what you want in a league competition. Not how many points did you get when you had the opportunity to get them, but hey, I'm going to sue you because you played one guy who may have played some tiny little role in your ability to stay up. The lawyers note that Poyet has been admitted being surprised the punishment was not heavier, and that the Sunderland manager has stated publicly that Southampton should have been awarded a victory when G played in a 1-1 draw at St. Mary's in August. So that's the one non-loss, the one non-defeat in which G played. He played against Fulham, Crystal Palace, and Manchester United. Sunderland lost all of them. That 1 point could come down to mean something. And again, you have to have eligible players. I'm not suggesting that Sunderland should get away with breaking the rules. I'm not suggesting that Fulham and Cardiff and Norwich shouldn't challenge if necessary. I'm not even suggesting that the 18th place team shouldn't sue. I'm just saying, this is not what you want. It's not how you want to go. You'd like it to be determined on the field. All right, while we wait for Mr. Reyna, Claudio Reyna of New York City FC, hopefully he calls we'll get him on the air, in the next couple of minutes. The phone lines are open, 347-756-6276. Well, actually, no, I shouldn't do that. I apologize. Don't call, because we'll get confused over here. We are. Don't call. I apologize. I take that straight off the table. Do not call me right now. Do not call me. Hit me up on Twitter. Your thoughts on the legal action that possible in the Premier League. Your thoughts on Gideon's LLM, which I mentioned at the top of the show. Your thoughts on the Premier League wrapping up. La Liga getting crazy. Real Madrid, a 2-2 draw this weekend, but Cristiano Ronaldo scores the goal of the season. Juve locked up their title by virtue of Roma losing, which is always the fun way to go. And we do playoffs here. They do single table there. Fine with both of them. Enjoy the intricacies of both systems. But when a team wins a title by sitting idle, by doing nothing, it doesn't really always sit well with me. But over the course of the year, clearly Juve, the best team in Italy, deserves their title again. Can they return to the European elite? Can anybody in Italy return to the European elite? I mean, Juve wants to go win titles. Milan wants to go win European championships. Inter is wherever the hell Inter is right now. And I know AC Milan beat Inter this weekend. You have Napoli, which is one of those clubs trying to get over a hump to break into the true top flight of the European game. In Italy, on the whole, the Italian game sort of relegated to a secondary status. England, Germany, Spain. Those are your three. Those are the three you pay attention to. Sorry. Those are the three a lot of people pay attention to. Clearly, there are plenty of Italian football fans out there. I'm not suggesting that they're not. Just saying Italy kind of gets pushed. All right. About 14 minutes left in the show today. I'm going to thank J. Cole again for our music. I think I've played all of his songs. J. Cole's choices of music. If we are able to secure Claudio Reyna, we will go long today. Just a heads up. I'm not going to cut off the show at 11:30 when we've got Claudio Reyna hopefully calling in the next couple of minutes. Looking at the rest of sort of what's happening this weekend, what we're headed towards the World Cup. That's coming up very, very shortly. You're all excited about it. 39 days? 39 days? Is that right? 30-man rosters coming out very shortly. In fact, I think I just saw our friend Christian Niari say that Yogi Löw will put his out on Thursday, his 30-man roster. Some indication of what Germany's thinking as they head towards a World Cup in which they will be one of the secondary favorites. Somewhere in that. If you were going to put the World Cup teams in echelons of where they are in terms of being possible winners of the tournament. Brazil in the top echelon, right? Do you continue to put Spain up there? No European team has ever won a World Cup in South America. Put Spain up there still? Perhaps, maybe? Do they have the firepower right now? Argentina, are they in the mix? South America is their territory. They clearly have a very talented team, defensive issues, but have the potential to go on and win it. Germany in the top tier, Germany in the second tier. Where's Germany? Very, very, very good. Everybody's picking them to win that group. get over the United States, Ghana, and Portugal, which the second team to be determined, although I think most people are picking Portugal. If Cristiano Ronaldo can do things like he did this weekend at the World Cup, then Portugal will be fine. I think. Maybe. And I found it interesting. The reaction to his goal was disaster for the U.S. Really? I mean, it takes... I'm not saying he won't score a goal like that against the United States. He very well might. I'm just suggesting that it was something about, the defensive issues were brought up in relation to that goal. He can do that against anybody. He can do that against the best defenders in the world. Doesn't matter the quality of your defending when you've got Cristiano Ronaldo in front of you, able to put a side back heel volley on goal like that. That's superhuman. Superhuman talent right there. Superhuman talent will be human talent all the time. As far as I'm aware, there's no country that has superhuman defending talent to take on Cristiano Ronaldo. What you try to do with Ronaldo is limit his service, limit the ball getting to him. That's obviously very difficult. He's an amazing player. He finds space. He's fast as hell. All of those things matter as you're trying to defend him. It's a scary proposition for the United States. But when a guy can score a goal like that, sometimes you just tip your cap and go, no matter what, we put a brick wall in front of the goal. He'll find a way to score. He'll find a way to go around it. In that case. Germany then, potentially favorites. Again, what sort of figuring out. Outside of Brazil, but he's got the home side to win the whole thing. Not everybody, but most people. We got the dark horses, Colombia, Belgium. Give me another dark horse, Trevor. Who else is a dark horse in this tournament? What are the African sides? We certainly make the case Nigeria, Ghana should be challenging to go to the semis. I mean, look, Ghana. I said Colombia already. Thank you for paying attention to the show, Trevor. This is what happens. This is what happens when your schedule is thrown off. I'm just kidding. He's doing other things over there. He can't hear every single word I say. JT Delaney, talk about the 30 for 30 soccer stories. I like that format. I'll admit that I haven't seen anything except Hillsborough. I haven't watched. There was the Garincha one. There was a couple others. Something about war in soccer. I haven't really caught up. I haven't been to that. And Rick says that Belgium has superhuman defenders. Do they? I mean, I know very, very, very good defenders, but there's like 5 superhuman players on the planet. Maybe 5. Maybe Ronaldo's the only superhuman player on the planet right now. Maybe Zlatan is a superhuman player. That's 2. I'm obviously talking attackers. I think it's just hard to be a superhuman defender. Gringo Mark says Uruguay is a dark horse. Daniel says France is a dark horse. I could see that. France. Roll of the dice, France. France could go well. Could be awesome. Could do some serious damage. Or France could fall apart. Succumb to infighting. Turn into a national embarrassment. That could be France. Either way. It's great. I love the dichotomy of France. A little bit of this. There's a little bit of crazy in France. There's a lot of crazy in France sometimes. It's a little bit of crazy in France that they take with them wherever they go. And if the slightest thing goes wrong, the potential for the crazy to blow up is right there. To derail everything. Absolutely. All right. We got a couple of minutes here. Still going to try to get Claudio Reyna on the air to talk to him about the preparations for New York City FC in 2015. The questions abound for New York City FC. We have covered many of them in depth here. We've covered it with people who are in New York and are sort of seeing the preparations as observers within the New York soccer market. But when you're Claudio Reyna and your job is to put a team together to compete in MLS and presumably to challenge for the playoffs or better from day one, this isn't a team that's going to get much of a pass. New York City FC is not going to take the field and people are going to say, well, they're an expansion team. Kind of expect a last place finish. And that'll be fine. They can build towards the future. Because of the pedigree of this team, because it's Manchester City's money, because it's Claudio Reyna in charge, because it's Jason Christ on the sideline, because of the relationship they have with Manchester City, because the New York Yankees are backing them. And do the Yankees back anything that's going to be terrible? I don't know. Do they? People are going to expect New York City FC to step on the field in 2015 and right out of the gates be among the 6 to 8 best teams in MLS. Is that fair? I mean, not is it fair that we hold them to that standard, because I think that's absolutely fair. But where's the number? Where's the line? What are your expectations? And I'm not talking about disappointment or failure or anything like that, although they will be judged by what they put in the stands, the number of butts they put in the seats, and than anything else. That'll be the major thing people pay attention to. You're playing at New York. You're playing at Yankee Stadium. It's not a great fit. It's got some odd sight lines. It's built for baseball. Your field's going to be oddly dimensioned. It's going to have a pitcher's mound lowered within the playing area. You're going to have to cover infield dirt with sod. How smooth can you really get that? Like, how close can you get that? Like, if you lay down and looked at how big is the bump? How big is the bump? The Yankees have the best grounds crew in the world. Everybody does, by the way. Everybody's got the best grounds crew in the world. Everybody does. You always hear that. We've got to make an adjustment here. We're bringing in a international friendly. They're going to play this weird sport on a field that's not built for it. We've got 5 events in 5 days. We've got the best grounds crew in the world. They'll handle this. I'm sure the Yankees pay a lot for their grounds crew. Maybe that makes it the best in the world. But this isn't going to be a grounds crew that is used to doing this as often as they're going to have to. You can guarantee that there will be a lot of attention on the field conditions at Yankee Stadium. How does that impact what Claudio Reyna does, what Jason Christ does? Does it have any impact at all? Do they just kind of forget that they're playing on a baseball field when they put their team together? Is that something that just pushed out of their heads? Because it is what it is. You can't change it. It's not gonna. There's no stadium coming by 2015. They're gonna have to play on this in this bad situation. Do you just push it to the side, or do you take into consideration field's gonna be a little narrow? We're gonna have to be playing on this weird sod stuff, and yeah, is there any concern whatsoever? Do you pass on a veteran, on an experienced player of an older age who may or may not have had any injuries in the past? Because I don't know, a bad step on the sod between the seam between the sod could be the end of his career, the end of his season. It's not worth the risk. Thierry Henry does not play on turf. I'm sure that's his personal prerogative, and the team would be fine if he wanted to play. But there's a reason he doesn't play on turf. Yeah, you could argue about whether or not he's justified in his bias against the surface, but he doesn't play on turf because he doesn't want to get injured. He doesn't play on turf because he thinks he's going to get injured, or it's not worth it for him at the age he is. New York City FC trying to build a soccer culture around their club. How can you do that? You know, Eddie in Brooklyn's on the record on this show saying, this is not organic, dude. Well, he didn't say dude. I threw that in. This is not organic. This is forced. This is manipulated. This is, when you've got Mariano Rivera as your first season ticket holder, how organic can it possibly be? That's marketing, marketing, marketing. Yes, that is, of course. All right, let's take a quick break. I think we're going to be able to get Claudio Reyna on the air. So let's do that very, very quickly. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Stay right there. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, a little extra time, Monday edition of the show, because we have sporting director of New York City FC and obviously American soccer legend, Claudio Reyna, on the line. Claudio, how are you, sir?
Very good. How you guys doing?
I'm good. I appreciate you taking the time this morning. I imagine you're a very, very busy guy. And I want to get to your sort of to-do list here in a second, but I want to start with what attracted you to this job. Do you have any misgivings, any hesitation at all about taking on this particular challenge?
Well, no, it was clearly, in large, something very exciting. Really something, that I never would have imagined I'd get the opportunity to do. Always had an interest in, obviously staying in soccer as a coach, potentially a sporting director, or in any way really. And so when this came along, it was just perfect. It was a perfect fit. It's kind of, it's where I live. It's a club I played at. And it's really exciting to be able to be part of something that starts from nothing. It's essentially a startup in every way. You get to, be part of building the culture and what the club's about and what the team is about. So it's really exciting. It's amazing. It's certainly very busy, as we all are, but it's an amazing privilege opportunity that I'm a part of.
So did the Manchester City connection played a role for you? I mean, was that something that you really thought about having played there?
Yes, it did. I mean, I haven't played there, even though there's been a big transformation since my time. Certainly knew many people at the club who's still there. Had a good relationship with the club in recent years before this happened, and then when this developed, they kind of reached out to me, and we started talking about it, and it was certainly a great fit. There was a former player, American, lives in the area, has kind of been involved in soccer in this country at all levels, one way or the other. So it clearly helped, knowing the people, knowing the club, and really having an understanding of what this all was and kind of their project of City and their building out of the club from the soccer side, as well as sort of the commercial and branding side of this whole project.
Now let's get to your to-do list. You're named sporting director of New York City FC, a team that needs players and needs a place to play, and at that point didn't even have a badge or anything. What was the first thing that you had to do? I mean, how do you even go about formulating what your tasks are when it's a blank slate?
Yeah, there's certainly, you start with kind of the staff and how you want to organize it on the sporting side. So I oversee the sporting side. Tim Pernetti oversees the business. So my focus was on everything related to the team, from the operational support that you need, obviously the coaches and coaching staff, the recruitment and scouting of players, which is obviously essential for us, starting from nothing with players, and then the medical and performance. So those are the four departments. And then it's, the first step was really recruiting and bringing people in. Being that we had a lot of time until our first game, was no point in really hiring people. We certainly wanted to have our head coach locked in before, the season, way before the season, so he can be part of the process. And, we're really excited about having locked up Jason and having him join us with his experience and his knowledge of the league and the way his team plays, and really the respect and he has from the players was critical in everything he does. He was a perfect fit. So it's just really, and it continues to be, in terms of the staff, just the support staff around the team, that's going to continue up until essentially January 1st in terms of speaking to people, recruiting the right people, and making sure the support team around the players is built. And then you move to the player side of it, which is obviously the different mechanisms of building a team, from expansion draft to college draft to scouting players outside of MLS to American players abroad to, potentially players that are going to get waived or have been waived or have not re-signed with an MLS team. So there's all these buckets in terms of how we'll build a team. We have a director of recruitment and scouting who's leading that together with myself and Jason. And that's certainly a major priority in terms of scouting and bringing players to the club. So that happens, and it's been happening, I would say, this whole entire calendar year, and it'll continue, obviously, until we start preseason in terms of bringing players in.
I suppose that's the thing that most people are going to be focused on with your club is players. Where are you going to get them? How are you going to get them? Obviously, there's going to be an expansion draft, but I think because of the profile of the club, and I'm sure you're aware of this, the notion of big-time players or very talented players, whether they're young and have a lot of potential, that kind of thing, name players, perhaps on loan, how do you work out a balance between being sort of a traditional MLS club and then also meeting the burden of being New York City's team backed by Manchester City?
Yeah, there's being in New York City, there's a demand for the team being successful and having some, I guess, named players, if you will call them, designated players. I think the most important thing that Chase and I are focused on is the soccer team on the field and making sure that we have the right players in the way we want to play, the right people as well when we bring them to the club. So whether they're a designated player or a player we pick up in the college draft, we're doing a lot of homework, a lot of research, a lot of phoning around to make sure that they are the right players and people and type of person that we want to bring to the club. So there's a lot of homework that's done on that. I think it's very important that you do as much as possible, and hopefully really you get as many right as possible and go from there. So again, it is a startup. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be some obstacles and hurdles that we need to kind of jump over and around. And we feel, though, in time that we'll have a competitive team, a team that will play attractive soccer, that will represent the club, the owners, and the city of New York the way we want to. So it's a lot of hard work, really, to do all this. There's to do it right, you need the right people and make sure that everyone's pulling in the same direction. So that's my job as we bring everybody in, new people, that they're integrated, they're part of the team. Everyone has their say and make sure that they, in terms of get us up and running in all the departments I mentioned before. We have to be up and running as smoothly as possible from day one.
Now, there's this sort of discussion ongoing, and it's always been there, Claudio, the notion of reactive, defensive soccer, Jose Mourinho and his boss, and playing good soccer. And there's a lot of lip service given to the idea of playing good soccer always and being attractive. And I know this is part of what New York City FC wants to do. You just mentioned it, and Manchester City as well. When you bring in Jason Christ, who obviously has a reputation for doing it in Salt Lake City, how do you meld what Jason did with RSL and his ideals and his philosophies into what Manchester City wants this club to be?
Well, it wasn't that difficult. I think in terms of our philosophy at City Football Group, it's to us it makes more sense to sort of describe how we want to play, and for me, it makes it easier. I think if you're getting direction, if you're given direction in terms of how you want to get there in a vision, it makes everything easier. So, for example, when we're looking for a coach, you're just not looking randomly for a coach. You're looking for a coach that fits into the ideals and philosophy in terms of how you want to play. And Jason ticked all those boxes. So, we're just going in the right direction by the coach. The next step is the players as well. If you want to play a certain style and you have a vision to get there, it's not going to happen overnight, but we have a vision, we have an idea of the direction we want to go. The players you choose and your scouting and that agents recommend, they quickly fall into the category of the type of profile of player that you're looking for that can create the style of play that you want to play as a team. So it's easier for me. I think it's more comfortable. I think it's, I think when you have some times is you just kind of wing it, I guess is the best word. I don't like that. I don't think a coach who's organized and meticulous in terms of how they want to build a team wouldn't want to work for someone that's just sort of saying, hey, do whatever you want as long as you win. We want to win. And as a coach and as players, when there's a performance, the first thing everyone's looking at is, very simply, did we win, did we draw, or did we lose? But after that closely is how did we obtain that result? Mm-hmm. And you have to judge that. You have to look at that. We believe in that strongly. Our sporting director in Manchester City is Cheeky Baghetti Stain, who's for me, a mentor and a close friend. And he believes in this. So for me, it just makes a lot of sense. You say, hey, Claudio, we look at how we do. Do we get a result? Do we win? But we always have to see how the team plays, how they perform, because there's no guarantees, because teams win playing different ways. Mm-hmm. You have to respect that, because, that's the way the soccer world works. So, when you play a team that's defensive or direct, don't complain about it. You have to figure out a way to beat it. You have to figure out a way to break down that type of team as well. You also have to be careful if you're an aggressive team, that teams that play on the counter, like what happened in Real Madrid and Bayern Munich game, that you're opening up yourself to that danger as well. So I think it's the interesting part of soccer. There's many different ways to get a result, but you certainly, and we believe in it, that you have a better chance of winning if you go out and you're the aggressor, you're trying to dominate the game, you're trying to have the ball and possess the ball. And a lot is made always of possession, because Barcelona, made this an art like no one else in the history of soccer. And the truth about possession is it's the only way you can control a game. Mm-hmm. So if you want to hand the ball over to the other team and try to be speculative and reactive and nick some goals here on the counter or on set pieces, it can work, but it won't work for the long haul and the long time. So we would rather control the ball, control the game, possess the ball, be dangerous. And really, I think that the next wave of coaching, and I believe if you're a coach at the highest level, you're starting to create a team that can adapt and play a couple of different ways depending on the players you have, and so you're more difficult to play against because you don't know what a team is going to do. So, we believe in this way. It's not going to happen overnight in 1 week or 1 month, but it's good to know where we're trying to get to and the vision we're trying to get to. As a player, as a coach, anyone involved around the team, you're always much more comfortable knowing what you're trying to do. And, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win every game. It's sport. It's competitive. You're going to lose some games playing well. You're going to win some games playing bad. But I certainly feel, speaking from a player, I've been with coaches and clubs and national teams where when you know what you're doing, it feels a lot better. You're more comfortable when you're going out to play an opponent. When you're in situations when you walk onto the field and you're not quite sure whether you're defending high or low or where you're trying to force the other team, how we're trying to get goals, it's usually a recipe for a team that will not succeed. And I think, again, tying that all together, it's important to have a vision and a philosophy. Some people might see it as like, well, this is bold, and how are they going to do that? But I think it's just, for us and for me, it's just better. You know what you're trying to do, and you know the direction you're trying to go.
The sort of the image of this club, Claudio, obviously in New York, and with the entities involved, Manchester City and the Yankees, and obviously yourself and Jason Christ, it all has this sheen to it. Now, unfortunately, because of the way New York works, you're going to be playing in Yankee Stadium, at least to start. How does that impact your thinking at all as to, you have a way you want to play, but is there a different approach? Does it change your approach that you're going to be playing at Yankee Stadium in an environment that's not particularly well suited for soccer?
No, I don't think so. We that's where we're going to play. We always knew we weren't going to have a stadium ready for the first couple of years, and Jason is well aware of it. He's not going to change anything. We're not going to change anything. I think it's important that we're positive about it. It's an amazing stadium. It's a great venue. I'm sure players who haven't played there, when they come play at Yankee Stadium and see how beautiful it is, they're going to be excited about playing there. Our fans, we feel, are going to make bring a great atmosphere to the games. But in terms of what we do on the field, that focus of what happens in between the lines, and when we play, when the whistle blows, Speaking for Jason, we don't want to make any excuses or change anything. He certainly doesn't want to. He has a way in terms of, belief in how he treats his players, how he builds a team. And he's going to stick to that. I don't think the venue is going to change his approach.
Now, Manchester City obviously has a reputation of a great academy and bringing through players. I know New York City FC wants to do the same thing there in that area, and I'm sure it's a rich area for young talent. How do you, in a short time frame, get some roots down in the community and figure out a way to start developing some of the talent that is there in the New York area?
Yeah, we started already with some work. We have community programs. Community director is going to start, soccer programs throughout the cities that we'll run and host, and various after-school programs. And sort of the next step up from that, we announced 8 affiliations with 8 youth clubs in the New York area. So that's essentially the start of our academy. That's how we're seeing it. So we have 8 youth clubs that are the bottom base of players from 8 to 13. Some of these clubs have teams all the way up to U18, but then we'll come in when we're ready at U13, 14s and up. So it's sort of the pathway and the pyramid we want to create. We want to have an aspirational pathway that a young player who is at one of the affiliates knows that, okay, if I work hard, if I'm talented, I can then go to New York City FC's academy, and then if I do well there, clearly I can go up to the first team. We provide that pathway. On top of that, we have a relationship with Manchester City where we'll be able to bring elite players over there to train. And if a player is very talented, they can go there for an extended period, and maybe not in the first couple of years, but certainly down the road. Manchester City and myself, we believe here in New York City that we'll have a player who'll go to the Man City Academy as well. There's no doubt about it. There's this pool, there's a talent pool in the New York, New Jersey area of a lot of good players that they've always produced to youth national teams, a senior national team. So, we want to create that inspiration and have young players aspire to be professional soccer players. We want to build that pathway. We also want to make sure, and we've done that already, and we're going to continue to do it, that we're in the community, we're approachable. People can reach out to us, youth clubs, community clubs and leagues, and we've really done a good job in the first almost 11 months of reaching out and having relationships with all the influential soccer people in New York City that have been here long before we've arrived. So we just want to join up with the work they're doing, but at the same time, because we're the professional club, we have to lead the way and bring people and really, in many ways, elevate again soccer to a whole new level with all these programs and entities that are around. So it's exciting. It's a balance, to be honest, between what do we do fast and what's going to take some time. And I think we live in a society where we just think we can snap our fingers and everything will be done. But this is a major undertaking in terms of building a sports franchise in this market. And there's things that are moving 1,000 miles an hour, and there's some things that we have to just take our time, and we still don't have every answer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But certainly with the right relationships and the right meetings and getting to know people, we'll evolve and as a club, and we'll do what's right for the local soccer community and for New York City Football Club.
Leads me into what will be my last question, and thank you again for your time, Claudio. The notion of this Premier League team investing in American soccer, and obviously the price tag of the expansion fee, which everybody knows. Money is part of this. How much money will be invested, or not in hard terms, but just to give me an idea of the type of investment that would be made in both the youth academy over the longer term, and then in things like training facilities, which is obviously something the professionalism of MLS has come up in the recent years, and that's a crucial part in attracting players.
Yeah, the support we get from Manchester City and the owners is incredible. We want to make this one of the top clubs in MLS. In the last 5
seem to have lost.
Are being built.
Go ahead.
There's some great stadiums, obviously, in the league. So, we're coming into a league with some higher standards than, say, 10, 15 years ago. We're in New York City, so we want to do it right. We want to do it right off the field, on the field. We have to make sure we make the right decisions, in terms of financially, where we spend money on training facilities and everything else, really. So we just have to make sure we take our time. We don't rush into anything, but with the goal that, we will be a club that, people would love to work at, players would love to come play at, that we treat everyone, in a really professional manner. That's the goal that I have as a club, is that, when anyone comes and works here or plays here, that they have as good as anything MLS can offer. Mm-hmm. So, to do that, it's not just about spending money, it's making sure that the whole club is also organized in in a good way that can serve the players and the coaches and make it a fan-friendly club as well. So we're excited about that. And again, we're going to need some time to build things that are, actual, facilities and stadiums, and not going to happen again overnight. But we're certainly, that's our plan, that's our vision, to make sure we have great facilities, a wonderful stadium for fans to come watch. So we're excited about it. Like I said, there's a lot of things moving really fast, and some things, are going to take a little bit more time. But certainly behind the scenes, it's sort of a 24/7 operation at this moment.
Claudio Reyna, sporting director of New York City FC, obviously American soccer legend, joining us to talk about the preparations for 2015 up there in New York. I appreciate your time, Claudio. Best of luck with all of the challenges that you're facing.
No, thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me again. Sorry I was a little late, but it was some meetings that I had to take care of here. But it was a pleasure, and hopefully we'll speak again.
Absolutely. Best of luck. Let's go wrap up Soccer Morning on a Monday. Thank you very much for listening today. We had Luke Moore, Kyle McCarthy, obviously Claudio Reyna there. It's a good one. We're on iTunes. SoccerMorning.com is still rolling, I believe. Tomorrow, Joe Corona, Tijuana Cholos. Joe Corona will join us. I'm excited for that one. Talk to you then. Bye.
Back in the days on the boulevard, I landed. We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract.